All right, look, I've heard you, okay? Talking about self-hosting your own services, getting away from the cloud or big tech, having your own data, all that stuff. It's typically talked about by nerds in very nerdy spaces with giant server racks behind them and their entire life dedicated to this thing. And you don't want that. You want something that's not invasive to your home. You don't want managing your stuff to be your hobby. You want it to be small and not take up a whole lot of space. I'm actually downgrading my server rack because the one I have was just way overkill, and I'm not about that life either. What if I told you you could host your own voice chat, text chat, file syncing, airdrop between devices, except not airdrop, remote access to files, music streaming, media streaming, photo backup, virtual machines if you wanted, all sorts of super nerdy stuff if you wanted, from no more space than half of the cardboard box the thing that it comes in, ships in. That is what the ZimaBoard 2 has to offer. This is a teeny, tiny little single board computer server that literally the lid to the box works as a chassis to hold up the server and 2 SATA SSDs so you can get off to the races and need nothing else. It feels kind of ridiculous building in a cardboard box for this, like the old school PC building days. I built quite a few that way. The ZimaBoard 2 is pretty stellar. It comes with 2 network adapters on board, 2 USB 3 ports, a power port, mini display port, I believe it is. Has a PCIe slot on board and comes with the cable to run power and data to 2 SATA drives, primarily intended for SSDs, which is why it has 2 2.5-inch SSD slots in the box lid here. I have a RAID 1 array, which just means mirrored, so that there's a backup copy on these 1 terabyte drives, but I'm going to expand this in the future. I just wanted to see what you could do as minimally as possible. My kit also came with a PCIe expansion card for adding 2 M.2 drives, if you would like that as well as a drive cage that I am going to use. Because long term, I'm actually going to load this thing up with some hard drives and make it a specific function in my studio here. But for now, we're just going to set it up with the tiny little cardboard box experience. Now, this thing ships, it's a single board x86 computer, which means it's like a standard computer, just really, really tiny, fanless, quiet. You can get fan attachments and whatever if you need. It is a standard computer, so you could run whatever you want on it. And I know the scene is very obsessed with the open source options right now, or with Proxmox or TrueNAS or HexOS or whatever. It ships with ZimaOS. And I've not had good experiences with the onboard operating systems of these things, and I just kind of assumed it would be crap and I'd be installing my own. But ZimaOS is actually pretty sick. And I think for beginners, it is kind of the solution that you want to go with because it is so intuitive and just so user-friendly with a nice GUI and everything. So I want to flip over and show you some of the things you can do with it. We'll walk it over here, plug it in at my desk. Again, literally the only things I'm going to have running into this is an Ethernet port and power, and we'll give it a couple minutes to come online on my network, and I'll show you what ZimaOS looks like because it's pretty sweet. All right, I'm loaded up into ZimaOS here. This stuff is rad. So you're presented with a very modern, very user-friendly, in my opinion, little UI here that shows you some system resource information, CPU usage, RAM usage, and so on, your storage capacity, whether the array is healthy or not, network transfer speed. You can get some other widgets enabled if you'd like. There's a clock, and then some basic hints at the top for the things that you'd like. And then you just have an app store for whatever you might want to install. If you're a crazy person, OpenClaw is available. You've got Peanut for managing UPSs and monitoring your power supply stuff, which is wild. Nextcloud, if you're into that. Ad blocking, you want ad blocking? You got Pi-hole. You want torrents? You got Qubit torrent or transmission. You want to sync your files between stuff? You've got SyncThing. You've got, what was the other one I use? AirDrop, not AirDrop. Snapdrop, which is like AirDrop, but cross-platform, which is great. You also have Copy Party, which is basically just opening up your server as a big file system, like a FTP server almost. You've got Tailscale if you want to start up setting up VPNing to your phone while you're out and about, which is always phenomenal. And then, of course, media streaming. You've got your Plex, your Jellyfin. You got Image for Photos. Photo Prism is another alternative to Image for photos that allows you to basically create your own little photo website. You've got Obsidian hosting. We're going to go on and install that. I don't like that every time I tell it to install and then move to the background, it closes the file, the app store, but that's fine.
We'll install PhotoPrism as well to play with. You've got RetroArch stuff if you want to host ROMs. You've got AdGuard as another ad blocking option. ArchiveBox, which is a self-hosted like internet archive thing for yourself. I do plan on using that on one of my servers, not to this one. We got Deluge for torrents as well. Calibre for your book management. There's obviously lots of chat GPT stuff. I'm not super worried about that. MB for your file streaming as well, if you'd like. There's pretty much anything you can think of in here. It's kind of bananas that there's already so much supported, and then through Docker and whatever else, you would be able to install just about any other self-hosted service that you could think of, most likely. There's Minecraft servers. There's so much here. The stuff that I have installed to play around with are Voice Chat, which is like a self-hosted like Teams or Slack kind of scenario. It's not a full Discord replacement. I got kind of excited. It is just text-based. I haven't actually set it up yet. A ROM manager, which I think is actually what I plan on using this server for once I get bigger hard drives on there to just host ROMs that are easily accessible on all my PCs. Now, Copy Party is a neat file manager that looks kind of like an FTP browser that I think is pretty neat, and I'm glad they have support for it. I'm having trouble getting permissions for it to access files, but honestly, with ZimaOS, you don't need it. The default file manager is very intuitive. It opens up in its own browser tab here. You have access to all of the different folders. You can upload files. You can connect to it. There is a desktop application for various platforms that I have here where you can mount your specific folders in Finder, Explorer, Dolphin, whatever. So if I go up here, if I copy this and go over here to, so using the desktop app, we can mount these things. I do not presently have them mounted. Save. I don't have a static IP set up, so it was mounted to the other one. There we go. I can mount it directly in Finder. I don't have to do any of the traditional mounting things, and then I can just start transferring files to it. And it goes decently quickly here. Estimated about a minute to transfer 9.5 gigs. That's not bad for what is a single SATA SSD, basically. I'm gonna let that run real quick. And we got some files up there. So now I can view those in here, and I can preview them. I can download them. Like, it's a really kind of fleshed out file manager. So you don't necessarily need Copy Party. In fact, I'm going to uninstall it here. We've got hosting for Obsidian let's get some pictures over. We'll set up PhotoPrism real quick. So actually, I put my photos in my SSD drive, but I should put them over here. There is a dedicated gallery folder on the onboard storage of the ZimaBoard. So I just moved it there. So now PhotoPrism should find it. What's it mounted as? We can look at settings. Again, 3 dots next to the icon to go to your settings, and you get all the normal Docker stuff. So you get ports, networking configuration, mounted storage location. So here we have PhotoPrism / originals is data gallery. So I can just use that. Lots of options, just like, because it is basically Docker, if you need any of those, but in a much more kind of user-friendly way than even Unraid, which is kind of cool. All right, so originals is the folder name for my gallery. So I just need to find my library. All right, complete rescan. Start. Aha, it found them. Okay, perfect. So it's scanning the folder. There's only like 5 images in there. It should not take very long. Obviously, you can map your own folder in those settings that I showed you if you wanted. Lots of control there. All right, indexing completed. So if I go back to PhotoPrism and just go to what is the default? I don't know. There we go. You can see here we have the photos. That is pretty sick. It shows, PhotoPrism's neat. It shows your camera, all the information about it, format, resolution, your camera, all the EXIF settings. Then you get a nice full preview. You can download the image. You can rate them. You can star them and organize them. I might actually prefer this to image. I'm going to have to play around. We might be switching away from image to something like this instead. I am not sure yet. It has video support, people, places, yada, yada. Go over here to your library. You can manage things, view your logs. Over here, settings, you can enable or disable things like special moment video generation like Google Photos or iCloud would do, automatically trying to recognize people and group them together. You can enable or disable those functionalities, which is great. Change your download settings. Lots of cool stuff there. More advanced settings where you can enable other additional features or disable them, like disabling FFmpeg or ImageMagick if you don't want any of that stuff. you can connect to other settings to actually use Explorer or Finder or whatever to mount this drive. We don't need to since we have it mounted through the ZimaBoard, but a nice feature for PhotoPrism regardless. If you have it self-hosted online somewhere on a private server, you could set up WebDAV so that you can connect to it that way, which is pretty neat. Lots of cool stuff. I really like PhotoPrism. I'm kind of annoyed at how much I like it because I was already kind of committed to image, but I like this a lot. I want to see real quick. We have no albums. Can we sort, like, how is it listed right now? Can I view it by, there we go. Kind of reverse chronological this way. You've got a few different ways you can look at it. I like that. Obviously organized by albums. I do think it's interesting. Albums are not automatically detected from folders. That's one of my issues with image. Anyway, I'm getting distracted here. This is pretty cool. And it was super easy to set up, way easier than image was ever to set up on, even on the, in TrueNAS or whatever on the B-Link that I set up. But you have lots of services like this. The one that I was interested in since it came built in here for this board was setting up a ROM manager. I have a lot of ROMs I've backed up from my games from various systems, and it would be neat to have a nice little user interface to quickly access them across the network. And if my wife and or my kid ever wants to start getting into emulation. Okay, so I know I have emphasized this a lot already. I don't think I can overstate how convenient the setup of everything has been. Like seriously, whether it's PhotoPrism or the ROM manager. I had a little bit of issues with Copy Party, but I don't actually need it. But everything so far from installing to the App Store to actual sane settings being used out of the box, this has been the easiest experience by far for everything. Like, now I'm questioning. I was already questioning using image versus PhotoPrism here. I'm questioning even if I want the B-Link setup. Like, maybe I take that whole shelf out. I just set up a few hard drives. I'm trying to run basically 4 hard drives on the ZimaBoard here and just use that for photos and for ROMs. This is tough, but this is great. This is the ZimaBoard. This is ZimaOS. Super, super user-friendly, I think. All right, look, I'm just going to say right now, the screen capture for this video is super crunchy. I'm sorry. I know, me of all people. I know. I get it. I hear you. I'm sorry. It won't happen again.
Now, long term, I plan on actually implementing this to host some of my stuff. I could have everything hosted on one device, and that's probably fine. Now, I've been messing around with this little 10-inch rack over here, and this thing is a lot of fun. I have a network switch in the top, patch panel, and then I have printed ZimaBoard, the company, actually does a lot of community support with regards to highlighting cool projects where people have made the ZimaBoard into a toaster and a whole bunch of other goofy things, and they share links to the STL files and whatever 3D printing stuff or maker stuff that people have made with the ZimaBoard. And so I have a basic 1U 10-inch size rack entry for the ZimaBoard and 2 SATA SSDs. And then I have some drive bays I'm going to use with it as well. And there's a few different form factors you can get into with 3D printing these things, and there's a whole custom chassis. But these are the ones I'm going to use. I'll have them linked in the description. And then 2 of the drives, I'm actually going to try to use the drive cage that this came in. Otherwise, I have like an awkward gap in my rack, so I don't really know yet. And that's going to be in a whole separate video on the 10-inch rack, because in this one, we're just focused on the ZimaBoard 2 itself and the cool things you can do with it. I think it's pretty slick. Obviously, you can do a lot with the PCIe expansion with regards to, I'm pretty sure, even though it has limited PCIe lanes, you could technically load up a GPU and run some AI stuff if you wanted. You could add in storage controllers. You can add in all sorts of weird stuff because it is ultimately just a computer. You can do whatever you want with it, which is pretty sweet. And I like the expandability available here, especially for the price. The cheaper model is only about $280 on ZimaBoard's website. The more expensive model, or the full kit, is like $350. So for what you're getting in the current winter of no hardware, I think it's a pretty neat offering. I'll have links to everything in the description below. Alternatively, as another small option, I have just recently showcased the B-Link NAS that I just made a video on. I have this thing loaded up with 2 8TB hard drives, again mirrored, and this is hosting my image file server for photo backup and my photo library, so my family can actually see it. This is going on that 10-inch rack too. That's what this shelf is for. So I'm gonna have the ZimaBoard and the B-Link kind of running together at the moment, at least as an experiment. Everything will have backups, but I'm excited to be playing with the smaller stuff. I do hope you enjoyed this video. Product links, whatever, go join me on the forums. If you've been missing my videos, speaking of self-hosting and everything like that, I've basically been self-hosting my own YouTube channel. I have videos self-hosted with transcoding, although not a ton of options yet. We're still working out the kinks there, on my forums at demodisk.zone. I've been posting everything for the month of April early there. By the time you watch this, stuff will be rolling live already, but I'm very excited with that movement. And if you want to continue supporting my work, using the forums itself doesn't really support it. I don't have ads. I don't have monetization for like standard stuff, but you can subscribe on there, just like Patreon or whatever, to support me, or you can support me on Patreon, or go pick up some stuff on my shop, because I owed a lot of money in taxes this year, more than I've ever owed or thought an individual should be able to owe. So I've got some bills to pay. Hope you enjoyed. See you in the next one. Remember to be kind. Rewind.